Everyone loves to see the honey badger smiling, but he hasn't had much to smile about in the last few years. The performance of the McLaren cars at the Bahrain Grand Prix was abysmal. Has the Australian made yet another mistake in his career? Stay tuned, because all of that and more is coming right up. First up, wide-eyed Ricciardo. We don't know that much about Daniel Ricciardo's childhood experience with karting before open-seat racing. Unlike other F1 drivers, he didn't have a lot of success in international karting championships before being promoted to junior racing. To have a chance at making it in motorsport, a teenage Ricciardo moved to Europe to compete in the junior categories that all aspiring Formula One drivers go through. He started with Formula 3, and after one season he was signed by Carlin Motorsports. This was one of the most important decisions of his career, because Carlin is a team that would produce F1 drivers like Sebastian Vettel, Nico Rosberg, Lando Norris, and George Russell. So he was signed to a good junior team. Now he just had to prove himself. In the 2010 Formula Renault 3.5 series, Ricciardo had been fighting all season long with a Russian named Mikhail Aleshin. He ended up in second place and lost by just 2 points. But he managed 4 wins that season and showed that he could be consistent over a season. He almost managed 8 pole positions that season, so nobody could deny that he was quick. Daniel was given a shot at driving a Formula One car for the first time at the Young Drivers Test. He impressed everyone by recording a lap time that was a whole second faster than the nearest driver. Red Bull team principal Christian Horner said that the test was an audition for replacing Mark Webber, who was retiring from racing. Then, in the 2010 Young Drivers Test, he was over a second quicker than Sebastian Vettel's qualifying lap the weekend before, showing to everyone that he was the front runner for the job. And he got it. By 2012, he was driving with Toro Rosso, Red Bull's junior team, and just 2 years later, he was promoted to the Red Bull Racing team next to Sebastian Vettel. Next, living up to the hype. For those who know about Formula One history, this next part will be a familiar story: the young buck against the old bull. Daniel Ricciardo was the new driver for Red Bull, and Sebastian Vettel was the 4-time reigning world champion. It was 2014 and the beginning of the years of Mercedes dominance, but the Red Bulls could still fight each other for podiums. And Daniel was much more ready for that fight than Sebastian. He recorded 5 podiums and another 3 wins that season, with Sebastian struggling to fight at the top for most of the year. The pressure, the changes to the car, and a young talented driver next to him made it difficult to perform, but Daniel had no problems at all. He finished the season in 3rd place on points and more than 100 points clear of the next driver. This was just about the best start that he could have hoped for. It seemed like his career path was clear and he would be a world champion one day if Red Bull gave him the right car. He started to struggle in 2015 with his teammate Daniil Kvyat, only managing to finish 8th in the championship and causing Red Bull to do some major work to the car. By the next year, he was back to his winning form. He won the Malaysian Grand Prix and got back to finishing 3rd in the championship behind the 2 Mercedes. In 2017, the Ferraris came back stronger and knocked him down to 5th place, just above his new teammate, Max Verstappen. Up next, Renault. Money, money, money. Verstappen didn't do as well as Ricciardo on his rookie year with Red Bull, but after he found his feet, he was unstoppable. In 2018, the 21-year-old managed to finish 4th in the championship above one of the Mercedes. Ricciardo finished down in 6th, and his star was definitely fading. It didn't help that the 2 Red Bull drivers had collided on track twice at the Hungarian Grand Prix and then the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Tensions were high, and it was time for Daniel to make a big decision. Should he stay with the team that gave him this opportunity to enter Formula One, or should he try to make his way somewhere else? For Ricciardo, the team was leaning more towards Max every day. They had invested a lot in the youngest Grand Prix winner of all time, and he couldn't see room for both of them. So, in a move that shocked almost everyone, Daniel signed with Renault. Now, Renault has some legendary history with Fernando Alonso, but that was more than 10 years ago, and they had been struggling ever since. In the year before Daniel joined, they finished more than 500 points behind Mercedes and didn't manage any higher than 5th place. So why would Ricciardo jump ship? Christian Horner said that it was because of Max. He said that Daniel was scared of the competition and was running from a fight. But surely, a big factor in Ricciardo's decision was the big paycheck. Renault offered him $35 million a year. Now, I don't know what your job is or how much you're paid, but you'd have to have some pretty strong willpower to refuse that. What's gone wrong for McLaren in 2022? And how much of a pay cut did Ricciardo take by moving to McLaren? Don't go anywhere, so you'll find out. Next, McLaren, in search of something more. Ricciardo had made his way to Renault and all seemed well. As was expected, he wasn't achieving podiums, but he said that he felt hopeful about the future of the team. This was why Renault signed him for such a big amount of money, to help get the experience and knowledge of a driver who has competed at the top. In his second season with Renault in 2020, his results were much more promising. He managed to score 2 podium places and finished the championship in 5th place with double the points more than he scored the year before. Everything was looking good for the development of the Renault car, and team principal Cyril Abiteboul said that it was important to have Ricciardo as part of the team's future. But he also said that they were having some financial difficulties and might not be able to match high salary offers coming from other teams. Variety is the spice of life. Then Ricciardo made another shocking career move and announced that he would be driving with McLaren for the 2021 season. Renault was caught off guard by the news and said they were disappointed to lose Daniel. This move wasn't the same as his move to Renault, though. First of all, he had to take a pay cut of around $20 million to join McLaren. Apparently, McLaren had tried to persuade him in 2018, but he chose Renault instead. So why now? A big part of the decision was to be in a more competitive car. Ricciardo is not as interested in money anymore. He wants to get back to winning races. The Renault looked better than the first year he was there, but there were a lot of question marks about how it would turn out in the 2021 season. The coronavirus pandemic put everything on hold and meant that Ricciardo had to take a gamble one way or the other. McLaren was switching to a Mercedes power unit, which would help Ricciardo with reliability issues he had at Red Bull and Renault. And they had a great technical guru with engineer James Key. By the end of 2021, it looked like Ricciardo had made the right decision. The team finished fourth in the Constructors' Championship after Ferrari, and Ricciardo even managed a race win at Monza. But he still had some work to do to get up to speed with his teammate Lando Norris, who finished 45 points above him. Now, McLaren's nightmare start to 2022. During preseason testing this year, it seemed like they were one of the teams to beat. They managed to avoid the porpoising aerodynamic problem that almost every other team was suffering from, and topped the timesheets on the second day in Barcelona. But all the promising gains that McLaren seemed to be making went out the window last weekend. The cars finished 14th and 15th after a disappointing qualifying session, and driver Lando Norris said that the McLaren was a long way off fighting with the teams at the top. When Ricciardo was at Red Bull, he lost to Mercedes every year. Then, when he finally switched to a Mercedes-powered car, it seems that Ferrari are on top. Mercedes are struggling big time, and it looks like all the Mercedes-powered cars are too. Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, and Williams all had a tough weekend in Bahrain, and they have started to point the finger at the Mercedes engine. Once again, it looks like Ricciardo has been in the wrong place at the wrong time. If he had joined Red Bull a year earlier, he may have won a world championship. If he had stayed at Red Bull until last year, he also may have won a world championship. And now it looks like if he stayed at Renault, which is now known as Alpine Renault, he would have been much better off. Their two drivers finished 7th and 9th. Daniel, how unlucky can you get? I think it's time someone else starts making his career decisions for him. What do you think the future holds for Ricciardo? Is he too old to switch teams again? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.